My name is C-Ray, and I work with Factor AE, a platform that connects people, projects, and invoicing from modern architecture and engineering firms. I've worked with hundreds of architecture and engineering firms as part of Factor, and before I worked at Factor, I spent over a decade in professional services, streamlining process, doing project management, business analysis, and consulting for Fortune 500 down to small businesses across lots of industries. So I'm passionate about streamlining workflow and improving process. In this video, I want to talk about 5 things that firms could do to be more streamlined in their project management practice. And at the end of the video, I want to talk about change management, because identifying changes and deciding which ones you want to make and then actually getting those changes to stick isn't always as simple as we think it's going to be. So let's dive in. Area of focus 1 is budget visibility. All too often, a project has a budget, but that budget isn't shared with project managers, the people with the most control over whether the project's going to be on time and on budget. So what I recommend is that firms make sure that their projects are broken down from a budget perspective into phases, and that those phase level budgets and the information about how much is allotted to the team versus any sub-consultants or other planned expenses is shared with the project managers, and that it's kept in a centralized location. So as it's updated, changes happen to the scope, or as budget is spent, time and expenses are getting logged, and you're tracking how much is burned and what's remaining in the budget, that's stored in a central place so that everybody from accounting to project management, potentially even the people logging time to the project, can see what's remaining in the budget and know if the project is going on or off course. Number 2, timelines. All too often, the dates initially proposed for a project aren't even communicated to a team, let alone kept up to date and kept in a central location where they're viewed by the team as a way to measure progress on the project. I'm not just talking about keeping the dates up to date so you can tell the client when you're going to have the work done. I'm talking about being able to view the portfolio of your work, see across different projects, and know where your backlog of work ends, when you can start new work, and maybe where there's concentrations of a certain type of work that are occurring across projects that could lead to resource contention issues. Having this in a central location means that team members can not only understand where they're at on their various projects, but it gives them an additional point of data to measure project health. Now you can compare percentage of the budget that's spent to percentage of the timeline that's elapsed, and you have more intelligent ways to know if you're on track or off track. Halfway through the budget, not halfway through the timeline, we might have a mismatch here. We're either running ahead, which could be good if we're billing fixed fee, or it might be that we are lagging behind, and we need to make some course corrections. The third thing I want to talk about is tracking percentage of completion. And all I'm talking about here is project managers going through their projects at a regular interval, once a week, once every other week, going through each phase and saying, how complete is that phase? Now, this is going to force them to look at projects that may not be on fire, may not feel like high priority, but could be in a negative state if they allow them to go unchecked too long. It also makes your project management meeting really simple. Everybody comes to the meeting having already updated their percent completes, and you have a third piece of data to check project health. Not only can you see percentage of burn in the budget and where you're at in the timeline, but you can compare those 2 data points to the percentage of work that's complete. If you've only done 30% of the work, but you're 50% of the way through the budget, we need to have a conversation. Likewise, if you're halfway through the timeline, but you've only completed 30% of the work, that's a conversation. And with all 3 of those data points, you can now have consistent conversations about metrics on your projects by simply having your project managers go through the projects and say, how far through the project are we? Number 4, resource scheduling. Now, I'm not just talking about checking capacity of your team members and making sure that they're properly allocated to all their projects. I am talking about assigning them to hours per project in a given week. But I'm talking about doing that intelligently by looking at remaining budget on a project and where you're at in the timeline and what key milestones or deliverables are coming up. And then comparing that to capacity to ensure that not only are your people utilized as much as possible or hitting those target utilization rates, but that you're also not overscheduling the project, or in essence planning to overspend before you've actually done the work, and that you're also going to hit those key milestones and those deliverables that are coming up. By keeping all 3 in check, resource scheduling now becomes a highly intelligent process whereby you always make clients happy by getting them work, you keep your project as profitable as possible, and you're bringing in as much revenue as you can possibly earn in a month by keeping your people at utilization. The last thing I want to talk about and this might sound like a funny thing to discuss in terms of project management, is invoicing. I see so many firms get stuck in communication loops around invoicing, whether they have project managers do pre-billing reports, or they have somebody else like an office manager or an outside accountant draft the invoices and send them to project managers. The fact is, if you don't have the other 4 things we talked about going on in your firm, the likelihood that you have all the information you need to start invoicing is very low. But if everybody's already looking at the same visible budgets and timelines, and they're tracking percentage of work complete, you might not even need a pre-billing report anymore. At that point, project managers have already provided all the information necessary in a central location for an office manager, billing manager, somebody else to draft the invoices. Or I've seen tons of firms do this using Factor. They'll set things up so that project managers can draft the invoices themselves, and then a principal, owner, office manager, billing manager, somebody else can then go through and check the draft and be the one to finalize it and make sure it gets sent to the client. So there you have it. 5 things that your team could start doing or look into doing today to streamline your project management workflow. Now, let's talk a bit about change management, because identifying opportunities for changes and even taking action are unsuccessful if you don't have a good plan for getting buy-in from your team. Here's my recommendation. Get your team together, or at least the project managers. Get a whiteboard, get a big pad of paper, make a list of the things that you think that you could improve. They might be things that we talked about in this video, they might be other things that are brainstormed in the session, and just go through budgeting, invoicing, resource scheduling, tracking work completion, and say, what could we maybe do a little bit different to untangle our communication loops, eliminate unnecessary steps, or streamline our process? Once you have a good list going, have the team vote on what things they think would be most effective and easiest to implement. And then set an interval of time, a week, 2 weeks, could be an invoice cycle, a month, that you're going to meet back and get feedback to find out if the changes you implemented worked, by taking incremental steps and getting buy-in from people on the things that they want to pursue first, and giving them a parachute in case those things maybe don't have the intended effect. You guarantee buy-in from the team, and they'll feel like not only a part of the process, but like they can really see the changes taking place. Because as you meet back, you can talk about the wins, what worked, maybe what didn't work, and what you might adjust in your plan for the next interval. Thanks for joining me. And if you want to learn more about Factor, which is a platform that connects people, projects, and invoicing for modern architecture and engineering firms, visit factorapp.com. That's factorapp.com. And you can sign up for a free 30-day trial or request a demo. We'd be happy to have a conversation about what you're currently doing in project management and how we might be able to improve that to make your firm more efficient and ultimately your projects more profitable.